Next session. Bridging Web3 digital wallets to Web2 environments. Our speaker is Michael Queralt from Queralt Inc. Thank you.
I guess I'm just following up on this whole conversation regarding Web3 and Web2. So here's part of our conversation. Is like, my name is Michael Queralt. Is like, was co-founder of Queralt Incorporated, and we did applied research for the Department of Homeland Security on bridging credentials to FIDO authentication. As things have evolved from the time that we started, when we first talked to people about 6 years ago about digital wallets, nobody really understood what it was, and nobody believed that it existed. It's like now all of a sudden they are, and crypto has brought a whole new environment to this. So our conversation today is really just to show a different path. It's like, and how we can use FIDO and digital wallets to be able to bridge the world that is coming. So we do believe is like, if you have been following, it's like the Web3 environment and what's happening on If you go back to what's been going on Web3, Web3 has been driven mostly by crypto and has been driven by the creation of these digital wallets that have been really complex for the consumer to use. Putting aside that crypto has crashed and there are some other things going on, one of the things that really has shown is some of the abilities or some of the new things that Web3 can bring to the market. So if you look at the history as we're moving from Web2 to Web3, one of the key components of Web3 is really the ability to separate identity, the identity layer, from the application side. So when we look at it, we don't think that it's an evolution, it's really a revolution of the way that it's working. The challenge that we have in the world is really that today you have most of the applications running on Web2. Web3 is developing new environments. It's like especially around NFTs, metaverse, and some of the other things. But what's really exciting is some of the applications that are coming in on Web3 and the Web3 architecture, which is really separating and allowing the user to control their data component and connecting to an application without having to share all of the data, and that application provider not keeping all of those data components. So think, for example, healthcare, where you have your data and you have your medical record within your mobile device. And you have the ability to go to different medical providers. They're able to see that medical record for a specific moment in time, provide a service. That information comes back to your wallet, and then you're able to go to a third party, to another person, without having to rely on that medical service to provide all of that information and keeping you that information. That, in one sense, is the value of what Web3 has. Part of the reason that we wanted to give this talk is really more than anything else to bring some of those things to bear to the FIDO community, but really there's an ask at the end of the day. So, but what is the biggest challenges right now on Web3 adoption, which is really part of the user experience, is like it's very challenging if you have tried to open up a MetaMask account or anything else like that, or any type of the wallets out there. It's like really becomes challenging to be able to do that. It's like, and still relies, interestingly enough, a lot on Web2 technology to be able to either validate the user, if they have to do KYC, what components they have to attach to it. And you better remember the secret words. It's like, because if something happens, there is no way that you're going to be able to get access to those funds. So one of the things that we see is like there's going to be the Web3 architecture that's coming. It's like, but then it's like, how do you interact and how do you leverage those two components? One of the things that really Web3 has and is challenged with, and more when you're starting to go into a peer-to-peer transaction, is saying, and you can change the words, it's like creator, it's like can be a user or an RP, the buyer can be the consumer, doesn't really matter. It's like, but how do you trust the person on the other side for certain transactions? especially when you're starting to do financial transactions, when you have to either share certain information, it's like about that user to be able to perform that transaction. We believe that part of the solution is really what's happening with the digital wallets. It's like part of the challenge that you have on digital wallets today, you have over 100 of them running on different blockchains. It's like, and most of them are tied to specific protocols. So how do you bridge that? The other side of it, from the consumer perspective, they're not doing just transactions on the Web3. They're doing transactions on both on Web3 applications and Web2 applications. So how do you bring those things together? We believe that FIDO can be a path to it. We do believe that there's a path on the side of like, there's going to be government-issued credentials, mobile driver's license. Some of the things that you heard before is like DID, verified credentials. Doesn't really matter. It's like where those credentials are coming. It's like there's going to be a path. It's like, but for certain applications, as you go into either Web2 or Web3 applications, you still are going to need to be able to do KYC, verify who you are you of age to be able to get access to certain services? It's like, so what's your location? It's like there may be governance components that you're not going to be able to do based on where you are. So those credentials are still going to be driven, are still going to be used to be able to make a decision at some given time. We believe that by binding those credentials to FIDO authentication, it's like we're able to provide a seamless experience to the user from either a Web3 environment or Web3 applications or Web2. It's like, and still keeping the architecture of what Web3 or the value of what the Web3 brings to the table within the oracle inside the mobile device that the user controls. The value that we believe is really that there is a single credential that you'll be able to use for multiple things. It's like, so, but we think that the digital wallets will be able to become that bridge between the two worlds. So what's really important is like we're starting to see use cases on it. It's like, and that we're starting to see some of the world moving into trying to figure out how to bring those two things. So one of the use cases that we're working with one of our customers is evaluating, it's a hotel chain. It's like they have properties that are physical properties. They have partners that are physical partners. Now they're also opening up properties up into the metaverse. They are releasing some NFTs. It's like for experiences. Some of them are being for streaming of music and other experiences. And they're also allowing for the trading of those NFTs on a peer-to-peer basis. How do you bring all of those components together to the user, which is really what's important to us, to make sure that they're able to transact on both worlds without having to think, oh, I need to get a MetaMask wallet, I have to do this, or I have to do that. It's like, how do you bring all of that to the application? So we started really, it's like focusing on the wallet, creating a digital wallet that allows them to communicate with two different worlds. It's like, then we went back, it's like, because part of the components that they had to do was KYC for compliance reasons, especially when they're trading. So we use the credentialing. We're looking at the credentialing side. As ingesting, we're doing then the KYC component. We're creating a credential. We're using components of that credential to be able to authenticate against their Web3 environments and then their Web2 environments. Why do you think that it's important now? It's like as we're going through those proof of concepts and everything else, the environment is ripe. It's like Web3 really drives a lot and really thrives on mobile first. Passkey, some of the activities that FIDO has been doing make this whole transaction much easier, especially from the consumer perspective. Apart from the crypto crash and everything else, there's still a market growth of 44% and will continue to grow. The user is a much more younger user, consumer, which is really much more interested on privacy and what information they're sharing with people. And there's a rapid adoption, not only in the US, but all across the world. So our call to action, which is gonna make life easy for everybody, what we're suggesting for FIDO to do is to do a reference implementation so that developers are able to implement this type of technology within their technology stack. It's like, so that it's easy for them to go in, look at some of the use cases, and be able to implement those without thinking too much about what the complexities are behind it, especially from the consumer side, because the consumer is the one that's going to be driving that adoption. It's like you're going to look at it, you're going to see it around the metaverse, you're going to be seeing it around other applications. It's like, so this whole interaction of saying, it's like, hey, I can do it through FIDO and I can work on both worlds. It's like, that's what we believe it's coming. Trying to make it easy, pretty straightforward conversation. Happy to answer any questions, and that way you can get some time free. Thank you for the opportunity. Happy to answer any questions. Sure.
Who's creating the reference? People online. So. Oh, thanks. Hi, thanks very much. Riza Rasul, Real Networks. Who's creating the reference application now, the FIDO Authenticator that you were calling for in your call to action?
As right now, it's like, so we're doing some work on it, or we have a group that's doing some of the work on that. So we may publish it, but it really depends on the client. It's very specific to the client. It's not an open source. But happy to work with somebody to be able to do that.
We've got a reference authenticator running on the strong key table. That's what we're looking at. Biometric FIDO authenticator.
Yeah, happy to work on that. It's, I think that our interest was really mostly so that we could work with multiple blockchains, especially it's like, so it's running on the Dapper protocol, and it's running on an ERC 1155. So we needed to be able to do those components, but it's specific to the customer. But at the same token, it's like then it's connecting to some physical partners. It's like which they already have their own structure. So we wanted to we're more concerned about the user experience more than anything else. But yeah, happy to work with that.
Yeah, what are the methods for account recovery or lost digital wallet? That's, this is one of the age-old issues. I lost my wallet. How do I recreate all my credentials?
Yeah, I wish I had a good answer on that. I think that it's like coming more from last few years, having working mostly on the crypto components. And there is, it's almost like if you lose those keys, you're done. The problem is like when you get into some of the current wallets, like if you work with Coinbase and things like that, they retain those keys, so they're able to allow you to provide a protocol for recovery. We think that the passkey provides a path into solving some of those components. That's why we think it's exciting. Some of the things that are going on, some of the announcements from FIDO to be able to do that. But I don't think that we have a good answer on that component. On this reference implementation is like they made a conscious decision. That is that responsibility really falls more into the user, because the organization did not want to have responsibility for it. It's like they wanted to take a whole decentralized approach of saying it's like it is the user's data, it is the user that controls it. And it's the user's responsibility to be able to do that. It's like we do believe that the passkey components will help on that. But that's a business decision more than anything else. It's like, did that answer that question?
We have an online question. Mm-hmm. Can we use a wallet as a FIDO authenticator in the future? The mechanism is very similar.
We believe that we can. We would love to have FIDO develop a component of that tech stack. One thing that we have seen, at least from the decentralized world, is like it really has to be easy for those developers to embed that technology within the ecosystem, because the focus is really develop fast, is like get out to market. The easier that we make it for those developers to embed that technology into it, the more adoption that we will have.
Do we have any other questions here in the audience? No? Oh, we have one here.
So I'm a little surprised that you talked about Web3 wallets and identity, but you never mentioned payments. Where do you see the movement of payments and cryptocurrency and digital assets in the union of those two?
Can you expand a little bit more on that? That's a pretty loaded one.
Well, if you asked anyone, how many folks in this room have a Web3 wallet right today? How many of you are using it for identity? All right, so my point made, Web3 wallets are about moving around money or some form
Yeah.
of currency, and this conference mostly about identity. The union of those two is about how you do both from one wallet. So I'm just asking, how much is that part of the focus here? I will say it is explicitly part of the charter of the Open Wallet Foundation that's just been announced is forming at the Linux Foundation.
Yeah, it's like for the use case that they're using, for the use case, at some point or another, there's going to be a payment component attached to it because it's like the user is able to get rewards, is able to earn some by staking and doing some other things. They're able to use to earn some funds behind it. There is a trading component, and there's a money component or a crypto component to it. To be able to attach to their, right now it's going to be to their native exchange. It's like, but then it's going to be moving into Binance. It's like depending on some of that work. So I think that there is a whole interaction coming in on that, and I think that that's where identity becomes really important. It's like that's why we had to enforce the KYC component because for limitations of country, limitations of trading, some of the governance to do that. So I think that you're going to see a much closer relationship of those components coming together. And I think that it's like when you move into something, if you're looking to do some trading or buying some assets into the metaverse and everything else, it's like I think that there you're going to see even a much closer relationship because you may be able to, based on your age, based on some of the things, you may be able to purchase something or not, or enter into an event or not. So I think that convergence is going to be happening. I think that the same way that crypto drove the adoption of this Web3 or this digital wallets, I think that you're going to see that pick up speed. As new applications come out, I think that that's the biggest thing. So that's just the opinion, but yeah.
So we have another online question here. Why would users store both authentication credentials like passkeys and identity credentials like verifiable credentials in the same wallet?
I think that the verifiable credentials, the same way as digital credentials or like a mobile, your mobile ID and everything else becomes a root of trust. It's like, I don't know if you're going to be storing it inside your wallet or you're just going to be using their infrastructure to be able to do the verification components to it. Look, I just think that there's a lot of different components working, or there's a lot of different protocols coming in on this whole identity and identity verification and everything else. At some point, you have to normalize them so that you're able to use them properly within the two worlds. Companies are not going to do a rip and replace, and users are not going to do a rip and replace of one for the other. It's like it's just, you can believe, if you think that that's going to happen, that's great. I've been at this now for 8, 9 years. I'm not really sure. But it's like, so that's why we think it's like you have to do, the technology stack has to be able to work on both worlds. It's like to be able to be effective.
Do we have any others in the room? Nope, and we don't have any others online.
Awesome.
So thank you very much
just got
for
6
presenting,
minutes
Michael.
back.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.